believe that's still moving forward as it relates to, again, not the negotiation from the salary schedule side, but the logistics and working on different supportive services for to address the vacancies.
Absolutely. Pay is certainly a factor in our ability to recruit and retain bus drivers, but it's not the only variable. When you look at the working conditions of driving a school bus, there are other things that we need to do. So we need to take a multi-pronged approach to how do we get people into bus driving positions, how do we keep them in bus driving positions, and how do we support them? And so there are a number of strategies that we're employing. It is not just a review of their salary. We made a significant change in the way that we pay bus drivers last year, but we need to look at the environment surrounding bus driver. It is a very difficult job, very difficult. When you talk about 65 students, rides that sometimes go 45 minutes to an hour, there is not enough money in the world that makes that a good job if you don't address training, if you don't address student conduct, if you don't address ride factors and length of routes. And so, yes, we have problems. We're going to address those. Salary will be a component, but it will not be the only solution that we employ.
Mr. Robinson?
I'm happy that you're getting a committee together, and I think committees are useful. But as a board member who's responsible for making the absolute decisions, and I've talked about this with you privately, I also want to hear it from the horse's mouth. I agree that recruitment and retention is a huge issue, and I agree it's not just about pay, it's about environment, which is one of the reasons why we had that discussion this morning. So I have no problem about having the union come up here, the employees representative, and telling me what they think can be done. I know that they'll be part of the committee, but I don't want to hear it diluted. I want to hear straight from them what they think that we can do. And if you're not willing to take if you're not willing to take criticism from people, you're not willing to improve. And so I don't have any problem with having them coming to a workshop, sitting at a panel like we do with other staff, and telling me what do the teachers want to improve their environment. We're not talking about pay now. What do the bus drivers want? What does staff want? What are some of the things that we can do to improve it? And I it shouldn't be adversarial. I want to hear what they have to say, and a committee is fine, and I'm glad that they're going to be part of the committee. But for me, when I'm making my decision, I want to have an unfiltered, direct conversation with them where we can ask them pointed questions so I can understand what the issues are. And I want to hear it from the teachers. I want to hear the teachers' representative. It's nice that we have landings and administrators giving them their point and their side, but at the end of the day, it's about the teachers. I want to hear what the teachers think. And so I would like to hear what the teachers' representative, not just done from a committee.
Thank you. Mrs. Brown.
I agree with Eric that, I'm sorry, Mr. Robinson, that we need to hear, what are some of these issues and where they're coming from, and not necessarily well, I'd like to hear not only just from leaders, but also from some of maybe the more seasoned staff and the younger ones also, because I think it affects them. And, I look at this where, they go from one year to the next, and the difference is 11 cents a year or 20 cents a year. Really? It just doesn't look like it really makes it. But I would like to make sure that if some of these changes, we've got a contract, and maybe we can change it for the following year, but right now we're looking at 2 years, but that maybe some of these other changes, if we have this committee, some of those other changes that you were discussing, or perhaps that those changes could go into effect the beginning of the school year. I hope we don't have to wait to another contract negotiation to make some of these changes.
No, I would suggest that we act immediately upon those recommendations, that we not sit on them until contract negotiations a year or two from now. No, we would act immediately on those recommendations.
No, and I also, I mean, I agree. I think Mr. Robinson raised a good point, just in general, and I'm trying to think of circumstances when we have outside stakeholders or various voices come to a workshop and share their opinions, and they represent a large portion of our staff, and so hearing directly from them, I think, would be helpful. I think that we can, but also hearing directly from teachers, which many of us speak to on a regular basis, to hear some of those struggles. But I think,
and some of the other staff too. Not just
yes,
teachers.
exactly. And I think that, but I think that, and I hope that this is understood, that it's a testament to really a major focus on not solely just a discussion about salaries, which are important. Don't get me wrong. But it's also in the environment in which you work and enjoying where you work and providing those supportive services and knowing what that is. And I think that makes a big difference when we talk about retaining any employee. I mean, I think anyone could agree that's plays a huge role in how long you stay somewhere. So, I look forward to those conversations, and I know I appreciate that feedback. Any other comments? I have one item, and I need to do action, but I need to bring it up from, as far as our internal board procedures. As now that I have become chair, I have to approve some of the finances, and I feel like our current procedures, operating procedures that have really only been approved via minutes conversation in our last workshop back last year, doesn't really stipulate specifically, I think, some of the reimbursements. So I have things before me to approve, but I want to my job is not to just do what I think is right. It's to act upon what the board has determined. And so I wanted to address specifically as it relates to, well, we have travel fees for community events, in-county and out-of-county travel. So right now, I don't feel like there's a clear specification as it relates. So right now it says, each school board member shall be allocated within the school board's budget an amount for the purpose of travel expenses related to their individual professional development. If a school board member wishes to participate in a professional development activity that exceeds their allotted funds, the request must come before the board for approval. I don't know what that allotted fund amount is. I know what our board, what the allotted budgetary line item is, but I don't have, it's not stipulated unless as per member. And so I think it would behoove us to have a much more clear stipulation so that I can act upon that and act on the will of the board.
I'm trying to recall. I mean, there is a specific, immediately I think it's $3,500, but I wouldn't stand behind that without having gone into the budget to explore. But there is a specific allocation for each board member. It does not include memberships that are collective in nature, but they're essentially individual accounts for conducting the business of the district.
Shirley, go ahead. Mrs. Brown.
I think we also talked about how, I'm the one that I think I still am the one that lives closest to the district. Well, I don't know, maybe not. I used to be. Mm-hmm. But there's more travel for people who live further. Mm-hmm. And, I'm not one to keep track of numbers, so I just don't even bother. But I think that is something that we had discussed once, and there might have been a dollar amount, but that we did talk about how the transportation for those who live further from the landings and further from these other areas, because I don't have much transportation to discuss. Mm-hmm.
Okay, Mrs. Brown, or Mrs. Goodwin.
I live further away, and it's mileage, obviously, and then there's a $250 a month fee for special events or things that you take advantage of that you do on behalf of the district. Is that what you're talking about?
Exactly what I'm talking about. So I feel like it's not very clearly stipulated. I think there's a cleaner way to do it for all of us, and therefore I think it would benefit. One, my job again is to not just interpret this my own way. I don't think it's clearly outlined.
Can we
and I
put it
don't
on
think
our
we've
workshop?
revisited. Well, yes, but I have things before me to approve regularly. That's not abnormal. But I wanted to expedite and make sure we have this discussion. So we certainly can do, workshop would be ideal if so. Again, I think there's I just want to make sure that we have it clearly outlined, because I don't believe it is. And there was one other item, but I'm sorry, Eric. Go ahead. Mr. Robinson.
My feeling is, and like Shirley, I've never put in anything, but my feeling is if a board member gets the 3,000, I thought it was 15,000, and I thought it was something like that, but whatever it is, 3,000, 30.
15,000.
No, the 15,000 divided by 5 is 3,000 each. That's what that's what my mind sits on. But whether it's 3,000 or 3,500, whatever the number is, the number is. And for the sake of arguments, I'll call the number X.
Right.
And that's what X will be. And so I think that a board member should be able to spend their X if a board member feels that instead of spending the money on mileage, they would rather spend it at community events than, because they want to be out in the community and go to certain events. Or if that board member wants to save it up and go to Tallahassee to lobby twice instead of doing the mileage. However the school board member does it, is up to them, and the constraining number is X. And so however we're all adults here, and we all, you got to trust your other board members that they're going to do what they think is right, and there's a constraining number of X, and as long as they don't go above X, they are free to spend the money however they think it's going to work best for the district. So for example, I know Jane goes to Tallahassee and lobbies for us, so I would expect hers to be, significantly heavy towards traveling to Tallahassee for lobbying issues, and other people may have it, more towards government issue. I mean, I but I don't have a problem as long as people don't go above X. Then if you go above X, then you should have to come in front of the board and say, look, there's this thing, I really need to go to, and I think it'll really benefit the district. I know I've already exceeded my X, but this was unforeseen, or whatever the issue is, or I think this would be great benefit, and the full board will most likely say, yeah, I do see benefit. I think you're the right person to go to that, and I don't see any reason why we wouldn't do it. But if there's a constraining number X, as long as you don't go above X, I don't have a problem.
Go ahead, Shirley. Or Mrs. Brown.
I would not have a problem with the 3,000, but I would say that the mileage, we have to take into consideration those who live further away.
No, and I don't disagree. And that it really does bode more of a workshop discussion. We didn't have time today.
And then when somebody is appointed to something like, I think you're on the Value Adjustment Board, and you're on it now?
Yeah.
But that travel from down there to up here and back and forth, I know.
Well, and I want to make it very clear. I believe that there is absolutely, as a part of our roles and how we choose as equally elected individuals, how we choose to do that role is going to be different, perhaps, between us. But again, I don't think that we have it drawn out, and I think we're one of the easiest cost centers to evaluate compared to some of the very complicated cost centers, and I think we should clearly have a stipulated amount for each person, however you choose to use it. I mean, obviously within, with proper discretion, nothing that's out of our policy, but I that would be my suggestion, but that may be what we want to talk about at the workshop. But I don't know if we're based on what it says, what we have now, which is, I think you can interpret it. I know you said 3,500. I don't know. Yeah, so it's clear that we need some direction.
Has somebody gone over 3,500?
We had a board member who got a per diem, a monthly per diem, and that was Carol Todd, if you remember. And so there's been different ways of doing things, but I think, the approval process is yes, but as far as a chairman really looking at that closely, I don't know that is if that is appropriate or not. I'm not sure. Mitzi, you can probably give us some guidance on that. But I think it's fine. Some of the things I do in Tallahassee are paid for by the Florida School Board Association, so I don't have to incur some of those costs for trips. But basically, whatever we decide to do is fine.
So our current structure uses the term cost center. The board chair is the cost center head, so that's why it's being presented to you. One of the ideas that you've presented is break us up into 5 individual cost centers, put money in our accounts, and allow us leeway up until the money that's allocated, and then we seek additional allocations. That is certainly achievable, but I want you to know why it's being presented to you is you are the cost center head for the cost center that is school board.
No, and I recognize, again, but also as a governing body, the duty is, my job is to act out of the will of the board. And so we're all equal, and I think we should all have equal access to the same information. This is just what I think is good operations, and recognizing that, again, like I said, I don't see my position any higher than anyone else here, but we need to come to an agreement so I have direction to do so. And I don't think that's properly stipulated in here, and I think there's a better way to do it. Mr. Robinson.
So I think you have to break it up, because the fact that I don't take a dime, that doesn't mean that everybody else gets to take more, because that would defeat the entire purpose of why I'm not taking a dime. If that's the case, then I'll just come up with $3,000 expenses and write a check out to ME Booker, if that's what I need to do, if you didn't want to break us all up. So, but my question is you're bringing this up, is somebody over the $3,000?
I think we don't have a clear outline of what we have, so I think that's where I would like to start. And
my thing is, if someone's not over $3,000, then if somebody hasn't spent over $3,000 since July, then maybe there's something I'm missing.
Gets back to, is the board chair the one who's supposed to keep track of how much somebody has spent? Because I know as board chair, something just came to me, and I didn't know how much somebody else spent, and I don't think all of them even went through me as a board chair, and even I don't know how much I spend, because I'm not the one who fills out the voucher for when I go to Tallahassee. I mean, so it's like, I don't know, maybe we ought to have a better way of doing it.
No, and I think you actually raised a very good point also, that it's not, there isn't really a way to calculate it. And again, I think our budget, our allotment is pretty easy to rein in and make sure, and just it shouldn't be a challenging exercise. I think it's in the best interest of all of us working and making that decision. I don't think it's clearly stipulated here, and now that I have items before me to approve, if you interpret if you interpret the policy, the current unadopted policies or procedures that we have right now, I don't know if I deny them, because what if I interpret it differently than what it was written? So I think we need to come back quickly, because I don't want approvals being, pre-approvals being sent that I am not approving without clear direction. So I don't know if we put that on a workshop or if we bring it to the next meeting.
Are there some that you are contemplating not approving that are sitting? Okay.
Well, no, I just want to, again, I have and I can run a report.
So
it wasn't meant to be, it's
right.
truly
So let's talk about it at the next workshop and come up with some better direction.
Can you clarify?
I do think that it's the cost center's head's responsibility to track how much money is being spent in their cost center, or else, that's what God made cost center heads for. But if there's somebody who's above $3,000 total spent since July, which would be awful hard because only halfway through the year, then you don't have authority to approve it.
Correct, and I haven't run those numbers on specifically. I wanted to get some direction because I recognize the sensitivity of this discussion. So I haven't run any numbers or asked to see, and it's like you said, Shirley, it's hard to tell who, because the way in which you approve it doesn't all clearly stipulate.
But if somebody has total spent over $3,000, I don't think you have the authority to prove it. But you're the cost center head, Bridget. That's why we made you the chair. You're the one who's supposed to take the responsibility. I mean, if the cost center head's not going to take responsibility for the costs in the cost center, then who is?
But Eric, but Mr. Robinson, when you get to be chair, you will see how there isn't really a way, unless the chair wants to keep track of everything, because there isn't someone that keeps track of how much every board member is spending. Right now, you just get them and they go, and unless she remembers what they were, that goes to staff someplace. But
wait, you're.
Nobody has come near $3,000.
Hold on.
Nobody has come near that.
So what I think makes the most sense, and again, the way I see this position is to act out the will of the board, what we decide upon. I don't think one should have more information than the other. I think you'll know, and Todd should attest to this, that my biggest thing is making sure that each board member have the same information at the same time as promptly as possible so that we can make decisions accordingly. This is one of those examples. I don't know, from the business portal, if you all still have access, and even in a read-only, that would be something I think would make sense. But ultimately, I need more direction on our current procedures. I think they're loose, and we can start there.
Can you clarify for me, you used the term unadopted procedures. Are you talking about a formal procedure of the school district, or is it the agreement, kind of the working document amongst board members?
Well, it's
I don't know what you have in front of you, so I don't know what you're
school
speaking
board
about.
operating procedures, which we discussed, remember, at a workshop.
Gotcha.
Pulled off the fax machine, the 4-drawer file cabinet,
Gotcha.
the outdated.
Right, when you say procedures, I'm like, there's a process.
No, this is truly,
Gotcha.
but this would be among us, but I think we need to revisit that area. And so I have a clear direction. That's the goal. So.
Yeah, and if we have cost centers at the school district, as I was trying to say before, if we have cost centers at the school district and those cost centers are not keeping track, whether it's this or IT or facilities, and they don't know how much money they're spending and they don't know if they go out of budget, then I hope that that's not the case in the school district. Not just this, forget about this cost center. Cost centers in general, I hope that people are not going over their budgeted allocated amount in there. They are tracking how much money they spend.
Absolutely. I mean, we have sophisticated financial management system. We can tell them what they've expended to the penny. They pull those reports. I don't believe this is an issue of mismanagement in any cost center. It's just a matter of we need to sit and talk about what information is available, whether you want to operate as a single cost center or 5 independent ones, and we can support you with the existing financial infrastructure.
Quick question. Why, being separate cost centers, you're saying we would divide each individual, and then the chair would approve?
There's a number of ways to achieve what I believe your objectives are. If you remain one cost center and make allocations to individual board members, it would still require your approval as the board chair. And so someone would submit it, and if your agreement is those things go unquestioned up until $33,000 or $3,500, or an option would be to separate them so that you're not even asked to approve another board member's expenditures. They are the cost center head of a cost center of one. I mean, it's an extreme example. I think there are structures we can put in place short of doing that, but it's just an option I wanted to put on the table.
Sounds good. Oh, good? So we have a next meeting on okay, well, I've just been trying to figure out timeline, so I have some direction because I don't think that we have clear direction, and there are items that come through regularly, and I just want to get that financial aspect taken care of, direction from the board.
Did you get what you wanted?
From if we have a discussion we have a meeting on February 6th. So that could be a discussion we bring up then. I can pull the information. I was trying to make it more about what we had budgeted for the cost center versus, not so much about individual board members, but I think historically what that expense is that helps guide some of it. But it was more of a procedural policy discussion. So, but we need to get something figured out quickly.
Procedural, I think we do it at a workshop.
Okay.
Is that going to impact? You're saying that you have things to sign now.
Well,
and my view is you have the authority to sign whatever somebody puts in front of you, as long as they haven't spent more than $3,500 for the year.
But see, I don't know where the $3,500 per person came from. There's nothing that says that. So does that make sense?
No, but
I get $3,500.
Because I think it says in the budget, I think it said $15,000.
That's what I always
$250 a month. Okay, so $3,000.
$250 a month.
So $250 a month.
So it's very clear. We don't have any direction. You're shaking your. Not you. Todd.
As long as no one's gone over $3,000 for the year, $250, then has anybody gone over $3,000 for the year? $250 times 12. If no one's gone over 3,000 for the year, then they're fine. If someone's has gone over 3,000, then you don't have the
Mr.
authority to sign it.
Robinson, I recognize what you're saying, but I think you could read the current procedures in a different way as well. That's why I wanted it to be redrafted, vote on it. I have clear direction. That's it. Because I don't think it's clear. And I'm not going to approve something that I don't think I have this authority to do. So either we can further address it, I can gather the additional information for February 6th.
Is it February 6th? I thought we were going to do it at the workshop.
Okay.
But I know, I think it came up, I think there was, I think it was an Education Foundation luncheon or principals luncheon or something, and we were being charged, and we're going, oh, wait a minute, but then they're like, well, why should we be paying for it? But it's like one division paying another, and, you know, those kinds of lunches that we go to, should we be reimbursed for it? And I think the procedure is that, yes, we should, but then how do we go about it? You know, do we, you know, what you know, what do we have to do? I mean, so that's what it is.
No, I think I think there are a lot of elements of where it could go awry. I think there's a very productive way to address this discussion, and it is that, and I recognize there's a number of things that people can go to, and I think individual board members should have the autonomy to do that. I just don't think that we have a clear delineated amount, and that is problematic. Would that not be the case in any other cost center?
Well, in other cost centers, there is a clear cost center head with decision-making authority, and your point is well taken. I am one of 5 asked to be made decisions for the others. In all of our other cost centers, there is a clear hierarchy in which there is a cost center head, so there's not a need for, quote, agreements amongst the members of the cost center. The cost center head has that authority, and so the question that I got answered was, this isn't a policy consideration, it's an operating procedure amongst the board members about how they wish to conduct their business within their cost center. And I understand your position that I am one of 5, which means I need direction from the other 4 to act, which is a clear distinction from all of our other cost center heads, in which they are the appointed authority over that cost center head.
Okay. So, again, there are rolling items as usual, and that's fine. That's the typical order of the business, but I do believe there needs to be clarity on it, and I don't think we have it now, and that's why it was time sensitive. Otherwise, I would have just waited for a workshop. So February, next meeting, I can get with Mitzi and pull what we need and get some redraft. Is that acceptable for everyone?
Sure.
Okay, hearing no objection, I will do so. I'm almost ready to let you guys out of here, all right? Our next meeting, well, I'm sorry, I want to make an announcement that on February 3rd, there is the Champions Parade is February 3rd in Venice at 2 o'clock. I also wanted to say that we had, I thought, a great convocation meeting, productive, very, very detailed, and I look forward to a follow-up on that. And our next board meeting is February 6th at 4 o'clock, where we'll go through policy.
It's my understanding that we were going to begin that in April, that to respect the timelines, we would have to have submissions by Friday. And since that wasn't possible, and to allow time for planning, is that the first one of our policy workshops would precede our meeting in April. I may recollect different than the rest.
No, I remember after tax season. I remember you saying that.
So
Almost
forgive
gets you
me.
there, not quite.
So our regular board meeting is February 6th, 2018 at 6:30, and we also have a follow-up for Irma on February 9th at 8 a.m. at STC North. We are adjourned.